What is the difference to you between freedom and security?
I think the difference, and you mentioned faith and believing in a higher power. What I have today is because that's where God wants me. I wanted a hand in creating it. I could take control in that way and turn nothing into something, but also just knowing that this did not come about because of me, because I would have never chosen it. So there must be more coming.
Welcome to Unreasonable Autonomy. My name is Sarah Grace. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs and innovators who refuse to settle. Here we dive deep into raw, real conversations with boundary pushers who have pursued seemingly impossible ideas and yet have achieved unreasonable results, whether that's in their faith, relationships, health, politics, yes, even business. All of those conversations are happening right here, right now. So let's buckle up because this isn't about playing it safe. Unreasonable ideas, unstoppable results. Let's go. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the podcast. Are you guys ready to get unreasonable? Let's get unreasonable. So my name is Sarah Allred. Super excited to be your host today with a new friend of mine. This is Christa Nichols. And let me give you a little bit of a backstory on how I got to know her. Whether you're listening on the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube, you really should jump over to YouTube because you want to kind of get her energy and her vibe. I think that you'll really appreciate that. But if you're on the podcast, I totally get it. But let me introduce you to her. So first off, she's like an Iowa farm wife, right?
Yes.
And an amazing sales copywriter. Okay. Like both can exist.
It can.
It can. And the way that I know her is her and I were both able to contribute to a #1 Amazon best-selling book together. And I just started to dive into her world a little bit. And I thought, everybody thinks that they know how to copywrite, right? Or they feel like they are absolutely terrible at copywriting. And one of the things I loved about her is she really specifically specializes in sales copy and in breaking launch records, right? Mm-hmm. And yes. One of the things that is so fascinating about what I learned from you is a lot of entrepreneurs hear the word launch and it's scary because it's high pressure, it's all or nothing. Like, has that been your experience with the people? By the way, thanks for being here, but has that been your experience?
I think there is an intimidation factor around the idea of launching because not only is it putting so much pressure on a singular event or something that you do just a few times a year, but there are so many different ways to do it. So yeah, I mean, you can launch with a webinar, you can launch with a challenge, you can launch with, so yes, there's definitely a little bit of an intimidation factor around it.
For sure. And I would say in my experience with working with entrepreneurs is one of their biggest fears about launching is, what do I say?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
What do I say? Right. And that's when you come in as the hero, right?
Yeah. It's like, how can I reach these people that I know I can help? And when you're the person who created the offer, it's hard. There's just a mental block there because you almost know too much about the offer and you are no longer the person who was in the place where you needed it anymore. And so you're a little removed from the audience and their pain points. So that's when it's really helpful to have an outside perspective come in and be able to take the information and create copy that really connects with that target audience in a way that is a seamless move from that cold, total stranger, who are you, to, oh my gosh, this is what I've been missing this whole time. I can't wait to sign up.
Ooh, I love this so much because often we think I want to say something that connects, but I'm not sure how to bridge that into buy this thing that can help you. Right? I think most of us can stand behind a story or a testimonial, but gosh, getting into that sale turns into we turn into a completely different human and we're awful. We're awful in a lot of what we do during a launch. Would you say?
I would say, yeah, sometimes we bend ourselves into shapes that just don't fit who we are. And there's definitely a dissonance there when our audience sees it and they're used to seeing our normal content, us being there. And well, hopefully you're there. Hopefully you're there serving your audience day in and day out. But yeah, sometimes when that sales piece comes in, if the work hasn't been done to move people through certain pillars of understanding and comprehension, it's a little bit like, whoa, 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 whoa. We just skipped like 50 steps in between.
Oh my goodness. Well, let me ask you a question. And I really want to get people into your world a little bit. What is the 3 to 4 minute version of what brought you this life of like an Iowa farm girl and a sales copywriter? Like what's your story that got you there? And then we'll start diving into kind of the psyche behind what got you there.
Sure. So I guess if I was to describe the journey in the beginning, it felt like I was in a rolling dumpster that was on fire, barreling down a hill towards a gasoline tank. Like, basically,
I want to hire you as my copywriter. I'm dying. What an intro.
Right? I was the rolling dumpster fire of entrepreneurs in the beginning. So when I graduated from college, I did not want to do the traditional route of go out, have a career, do all of that, and then eventually get back to the idea of having kids and a family. I met my husband while I was still in college. We got married this summer between my junior and senior year. And when I graduated, we moved back to the farm. And I started doing side projects for graphic design for the cattle industry while he worked his career, and we had 2 kids. And I had a professor, the law professor that I was studying under, I learned not to talk about my dream of having a family while I was still in college, because she sat me down, called me in, she's asked me, "Where are you going to law school?" And I said, "I'm not going to law school." And she's like, "Okay, well, where are you going to grad school? Because I want to write you a recommendation." And I said, "I'm not going to grad school." She's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going home. My husband and I want to start a family." And she looked me straight in the face and said, "Why are you even in college then?" And I remember feeling so deflated because, number one, she didn't understand my dream, which of course it wasn't her dream. But number two, who says that having a family means you shouldn't educate yourself, that you should somehow bend yourself into certain shapes just to fit the mold? And I picked up my backpack and I left that meeting that day. And I never talked about what I was going to do after graduation within the academic world again, because I learned that people didn't understand my dream. And so we had 2 kids. I was working a little at-home business. I did that for 16 years. And it was a full-time income type business. It was great. And then the dumpster fire started on a day where I got a phone call from the office manager of the company that held 80% of my contracts. And she said, "I'm packing up my desk. This is my last day. They're retiring. And I know they didn't tell you." And that was the end of that business, basically.
80% of your revenue contracts clients in one phone call.
One phone call out of the blue. One summer day, I sat on the couch and I just kind of stared at the wall for a while, because honestly, I didn't have a plan B. I had never thought about this business not existing. Very naive of me, I know. And the worst part was, just a few months ago, I had retired my husband from his career after a shoulder injury so that he could come work with me in this business. And we had completed the paperwork to pull our kids from public school and do homeschool. So we were set up with this at-home business that no longer existed, with me having to make the decision now, what do I do? Do I go out and try to start my career after 16 years of not being in the workforce? No resume, none of that.
Which is like largely frowned upon in corporate. It's a red flag, right? Yeah. Like if you wanted to go into an existing company,
you would start at the very bottom. And literally, if you could look out my window right now, it's nothing but cornfields. The nearest live human being is 2.5 miles away. I would have to commute an hour every day just to get to a city big enough that could give me something to do with my skills that would generate a full-time income. And so I was like, I could do that. That's option number one. Or I figured it out once. I could figure out again. I can go ahead and find a different way to generate income from home. Because if I don't, then I have to give up my dream of having a family that gets to spend lots of time together and working with my husband and having this weird lifestyle that, people don't understand, but we love it. So that's what we decided to do. And that's kind of how I got into digital marketing and using social media to promote my business. And I tried a lot of different services. But when I landed on sales copy, it was just an instant fit. I have a background in journalism and psychology. So I was just amazed. I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, I get to do this and people will pay me. It was so great.
Wow.
But yeah, it was born out of desperation, honestly. I probably would have never made the move unless I had to, because I am not a risk taker.
So that phone call was the springboard for you to actually kind of own it and say, I'm going to build something on my own.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So I have a million questions. So let's really start with one. When I look at your story just in a list form, I see homeschooling, I see background in journalism, I see wanting to generate income from home, I'm seeing the inability or the lack of desire to want to commute an hour each way into a corporate scene. I see a 16-year quote unquote resume gap that feels like a red flag. And often it seems like, is this a sign, whether you're a spiritual person or not, or you believe in a higher power, whatever, that looks like to you. Did you ever consider that maybe that was a sign to dive into the homeschool scene and into the being a mom scene full time? Like what was it about it that says, I will not let go of my professional endeavors through this experience? What was that like?
It was a lot of pressure, but at the same time, almost freedom, because I had this business for 16 years and just, grew a weird random skill set, learned how to deal with difficult clients, deal with good clients, all kinds of different things. And I was used to being pretty independent. I also really liked being busy. And the idea that suddenly I could choose what services I offered and I could take this little bit of time in between, as crazy as it was and as disappointing as the news of my business failure had been, and choose and figure out what I was made of and figure out what I could do. I just didn't want to let go of that. And also, like I said, my husband had just left his career. He had a shoulder that was never going to be 100% again. He couldn't do the construction that he used to do.
Wow.
And so, with me being the one that had experience running her own business for that many years, it just made more sense for me to continue on that path. Whereas he would have had to go out and start over somewhere else. I could take what I learned and turn it into something. And that was kind of a wild and crazy time, because when your roles reverse like that, like, we're a very traditional family. And so that was an adjustment period too. And, there's some funny stories around that and learning how to, juggle the breadwinner role and, in those marriage roles and stuff. But I guess it never really occurred to me that I wouldn't continue doing something to generate income for the family, because I had been doing it for the last 16 years and it just turned up the heat a little bit.
Yeah.
Added a little bit more.
That and a little bit more. And I do want to dive into some of the interesting things in the family dynamic of as you stepped into that role of breadwinner. And I'm just going to really put you on the spot. If it takes you a minute, it's fine. You talked about there being a lot of pressure, right? Right.
Mhm.
And a lot of time when there's a lot of pressure, we are seeking for an end result. And the end result you mentioned was, yeah, I felt pressure, but I felt free. I could see freedom on the horizon. And what's fascinating about that is I imagine when a lot of that pressure happens for the everyday individual, that they are actually seeking after security,
Yeah.
not freedom, security. So how in the world, what is the difference to you between freedom and security?
I think the difference, and you mentioned faith and believing in a higher power. I do, because I know that if God had not pushed me out off the cliff from that old business, I would still be there. If nothing had happened, nothing had changed with the client list, I would still be there. What I have today is because that's where God wants me. And I did, seeking security for me, I guess maybe I wanted a hand in creating it. Maybe I knew that I could take control in that way and turn nothing into something. But also just knowing that this did not come about because of me, because I would have never chosen it. So there must be more coming. There must be a bigger purpose for this, because there's no other explanation besides, hey, here's this path and there it is. And there's really no way back. So let's just find out.
Holy smokes. You just knew there had to be something on the horizon because you didn't spark it in a way.
Right.
Right. So did you see evidences of, is it okay if I use the word God?
Yes, of course. Yes.
All right. Did you see evidence of God along the way? Because my guess is you didn't start day one and learn digital marketing and know how to put a package together and know how to pitch it and know how to deliver, right? My guess is it did not happen the next morning. What was your relationship with God like during that building phase with a lot of pressure and needing to bring in revenue?
It took me some time to adjust because it was such an unexpected blow. Honestly, I feel like maybe I went through a little bit of a depression because I had done this for 16 years. And now what was I? Now, how could I have been so foolish to put all of, 80% of our eggs in one basket, So there was a little bit of like coming to terms with the ways that I had made mistakes along the way, but also like uncovering inner strengths and talents that I hadn't used for a long time. So right away, I knew that I wanted to be able to use social media to market my services. Even if I didn't really know yet what I wanted to offer, I was like, well, I'm really good at this graphic design for cattle auctions. Maybe I can find some other auctioneers who would hire me. So I was like, but I need a way to reach them. And so I have Facebook. I'll go figure it out. And so I started just kind of joining different groups that talked about social media and this and that. And I met Coach from the Twin Cities that I eventually ended up joining her coaching program. And it changed my life because I knew that I couldn't just drag my feet around here and take forever to figure this out. I needed to figure this out now. And I knew that that meant I needed to put myself with people who had already figured it out. And so I joined this coaching program. It was $10,000, which was insane at that time. And I actually, when they invited me to join, I told them no, because when they told me how much. So I had no experience with online coaching. And so when they announced that they were opening this program, I was super excited. I was like, oh, I'll apply. And if they like me, they'll let me in.
Right.
And it was like a paid thing. I don't know why. So I'm on the call and it sounds amazing. And I'm super excited. And they're like, and it's $10,000. And I just was like, oh, I can't do that. And I hung up the phone. And when we were done talking, and for 2 weeks, I just could not get it out of my head. I couldn't let it rest. Like it would not go away. And so finally I was like, honey, I have to do this. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense, but I need this. And so I did it. And within, I think 3 or 4 months, I had made back my entire investment in the year-long program and went on to make 6 figures that year because of the support and education and network and accountability. And just, it just really was something that was right place, right time, exactly what I needed to be able to figure out how to put myself out there. Not just that, but it opened my eyes to a ton of different things that you could do for people virtually from anywhere in the world that people would pay you for. I was like, copywriter. I've heard that before. I don't really know what that is.
Right.
So let's just look around. Let's find out. Let's figure it out. And so I did. And for a long time, whatever clients said they wanted, I would do. And if I didn't know how to do it, I would just learn how to do it and then figure out whether I liked it and wanted to continue to offer that or not. But I was so fearless in that moment because the other option was send my kids back to school and spend most of my waking hours away from my dream that we had worked for almost 2 decades to build as a family.
All in the name of security. Someone providing a regular paycheck for you, right? Like you would give up a huge price, right? You would give up a lot in the name of security.
Yeah. And for somebody who's been used to being her own boss for her whole professional life, having a boss again, I knew that would be a struggle for me. Not because I'm like super controlling or anything, but just because I'm used to the cadence that I work under. And I'm used to taking initiative and stepping out and having to, be accountable in that way to someone else's goals and dreams for their business would be really strange.
Oh, and I love so much. I want to bring in something you said early on in the podcast. You were talking about how, I've just been someone who has figured out this thing. And then when the next problem came, I kind of had to figure that out too. And it seems like that has been woven through your identity throughout your journey. And correct me if I'm wrong, just in the sense that I'm not starting over, right? Like, even though a lot of people would look at it, oh, you lost 80% of your clients, you are literally starting over, you're building something brand new. You still brought this more advanced identity to the table by saying, well, I figured things out up to here, up to, round one. And I'm starting at round one. I'm not starting at round zero. Like, I'm at round one. And now I'm figuring out round two, which is, what do people pay for? Right. And then when I get there and I say, oh, copywriting, I've got a background in journalism and like maybe I could do that. Okay. Well, now I've got to figure out how to sell it online, like how to package it. Okay. Well, that's round three. And so what do you say is the secret to knowing the next step? What is the secret to knowing, like what is the next thing to figure out? What's been your process that way?
So my process that way, in the very beginning, from the very beginning, I really I didn't want to make missteps that would waste time or endanger our financial situation. So I relied heavily on prayer and just saying, open a door. I'll go through it, whatever it is, open a door. And if it's not a door, like a window is enough. And so I would just follow whatever was in front of me at the time. I would look at it and think, does this help me continue to live aligned with my beliefs, with my passions, with my talents, and with our goals financially? And if it did, then I would go that direction. And if it didn't, I wouldn't. And I didn't always get it right. Didn't always get it right. Of course, nobody does. But you start making more moves and you learn what's aligned with that. And it becomes more second nature as you see different opportunities come up. And of course, in the beginning, you say yes to everything. You accept all clients and you learn, you grow, you step into things that you can become an expert at. You raise your rates, you begin to be able to say no. And there's just a lot of letting go and then grabbing the next thing and moving, and nothing will grow you as a person like being an entrepreneur.
Oh, amen.
If somebody had plopped me 2015 or 16 me into the business I have today, there's no way I could have handled it at that point. And it was the forge that formed the person that can lead the business I have today. All of that trial and struggle and growth and falling down and getting back up again, that made me the person that can lead my business today. And so none of it was wasted. I didn't love all of it, but none of it was wasted.
None of it was wasted. So you believe in the I'm going to call it a proverb. It's not a proverb, okay? But like, you believe in the proverb that your business will only grow to the level that you grow.
Absolutely. Yes.
That it's a mirror of what you have searched for and what you have built and fought for along the way.
Yes. I teach that to my students. Your business will only grow to the level of your belief, of what you believe is possible for you.
Oh, incredible. Well, let me pick your brain a little bit about, okay, you landed on copywriting and you were like, okay, I have this background in journalism. I guess people pay for this. That's what the market is telling me. How did you land your first client?
Well, the mastermind that I was in, sometimes the coach would pass along referrals. If she didn't take a certain project and she knew that somebody in the coaching program had that skill set, she would pass it along. And so an opportunity came my way to write ad copy for a Facebook ads agency. And I had never seen the inside of ads manager, never written ad copy.
I love this so much.
But because this door had opened and because my coach trusted me and she was like, you can totally do this. Just, do the interview with the agency owner. And so I did. And for some reason, she hired me. She'd never hired a copywriter to do her ads before. That was something she had always done, but it was her sticking point. She couldn't take on more clients if she was the one doing all the writing. And so she had faith in me, turn the wheels of the ad copy over to me. And within 30 days, I was also running ads for clients. So I became an ads copywriter and an ad strategist. And I was there for a year. And as I learned how to get ad copy to convert, it just followed that I would begin looking at the client's email sequences and their funnels and their ad scripts. And that's how I learned sales copy and conversion, by being inside and seeing the data come in and watching it live. And it just really gave me a background that a lot of sales copywriters don't have, because it was like, you don't start with Facebook ad copy. That's like the beast. A lot of copywriters are like, I won't touch that, because it's very specific. It's very particular. It's a lot of testing, it's just very different than any other type of copy deliverable that you do. So I started with the hard one. And
I am speechless, which is rare for me.
Yeah.
Right? Speechless. And for those of you watching on YouTube, she's got her dog on her lap talking about this. And I'm like,
this is my coworker.
I'm dying. This is the unreasonable life right here, right?
Yeah.
It's just a testament. But I'm absolutely dying with the fact that you didn't say, I don't know how to do Facebook ad copy, because that feels like a completely different beast, right? Completely different angle, right? Because there's so many like requirements and filters. I'm not even using the right words because it's not the world that I'm in, right? But the fact that you didn't say, that's not really my thing. Could I help with your emails? Could I help with your sales page or something like that? And within 30 days, you were actually managing the ads.
Yes. Yeah.
Blown away.
I look at 2018 Christa and I'm like, man, she was brave. Man, she was, because now that I'm in a place where my business is, I'm comfortable. I'm like, I don't know if I would take those kinds of challenges anymore because I don't have to, you know what I mean? But at that time I was like, well, the worst I can do is fail. So, and I know I can learn. That was a huge pillar of all of it for me was, all right, well, I've got a brain and I can learn. And so I would learn. And some things I learned and I was like, this is never going to be my thing. But traffic was, yeah. And so then clients started coming from the agency and asking me if I would write their funnels and their emails. And by the time 2018 was rolling to a close, my husband was like, this is your thing. Sales copy is your thing. It's time to start your own business, hang your own shingle. It took him 4 months to talk me into it because I was like, safe in here. This is consistent, and I love the agency. I still write for the agency sometimes and I love them, but he was right. So gave my notice at the end of 2018, hung up my shingle as a sales copywriter. And that's where we've been ever since. My revenue, I went from like $6,000 a month at that time to 20 in 60 days.
Oh my God.
Willing to step into what my true calling was and go for it.
So what I'm witnessing thus far in your journey is the phone call came in, right? And you decided, I'm going to take the path of freedom. I'm not going to take the path of security, right? And so in order to take the path of freedom, you have to dive into some form of new opportunity, right? That's the marketing term. What's the new opportunity? And you saw that within a coach, right? And you invested $10,000 into a new opportunity. You showed up, you did the work, you gained the trust of your coach. And here's where I want people to lean in for a hot second, okay? Because someone's going to come in and look at your 20K months and they're going to be like, but I don't know anybody. I just don't know anybody. Like, who am I going to connect with that's going to want that service, or that, like, how do I build a network? Or like, that's often one of the biggest, like, brain things that comes in with my clients is, I believe it can happen for Christa, but I don't know anybody. And you guys lean into Christa's story that she knew one person. In fact, she bought her way in to know that one person. What does that bring to your mind? Like, you need to know one person.
Right. I mean, everyone can connect with one person, right?
Yes.
And it can start there because of that one person. And I watched people, I watched coaches. I wanted to know, are you legit? Can I relate to you? This was a mom who lived in the Twin Cities, which is just a few hours away from me. She hadn't come from money. She had bootstrapped her business. And I was like, okay, if she can do it, I can do it.
Love it.
and I met some amazing friends I'm still friends with to this day, and was able to pretty quickly, create a network. I mean, I'm a naturally friendly person, so it was fun meeting people online. It was fun seeing all these different types of businesses and learning. And it was beyond what I ever would have dreamed that I could accomplish for myself, because I live in the middle of a cornfield, like legit. I've got country Wi-Fi, folks, but yet I've been able to work for people all over the world and travel and speak and coach at a high level, for ClickFunnels and just all kinds of crazy things.
Incredible. So now you're at a stage where you have, you got the phone call, you witnessed the new opportunity, you found a coach that aligned you and that got you there rapid speed, which I believe is why we invest, right? To make things go faster, right?
Yeah.
You connected with literally one person that referred your first client after this phone call, right? And and what was funny is this new client was asking you to do something you didn't particularly specifically know how to do, and you said yes anyway. Okay, you said yes anyway. So we're going to get controversial for a hot second. Okay, there is this part of the entrepreneurship world that says you shouldn't do it for the money. Okay.
Okay.
Shouldn't do it for the money. Have you ever heard that in entrepreneurship?
Oh, sure. It's all about service. It's all about
service. And we can share beliefs back and forth about this, but here's my thing is you were in a space of financial desperation.
Yes.
Right? And so is it true that you shouldn't go after the money? Like, what's your belief around that as people are bridging those gaps, building bootstrapping, right? What do you think?
Well, when you've got kids, when you've got people on you and bills to pay, and you have a skill set that can help someone else, it's worth paying for. It's worth getting paid for. Money isn't my main motivation in life, and I don't think that it's necessarily wrong to want to make a lot of money. For me, it's freedom. Freedom is my core value. I want flexibility. I want to be able to do what I love. I want to be able to be in control of my times. So that's what motivated it for me. But in order to do that, I had to be generating income. That was just part of the puzzle for me to figure out.
So when you work with someone that it is potentially a client, right? That wants to work with you, that wants your service, that wants to pay you, but can't afford your current pricing because you've raised your pricing, you're scaled, you've got the authority, you're speaking, you're traveling, you're doing the 5-figure months, all of those things. And do you ever get into a space of like, everybody needs my service? Because you literally help businesses make money, which then helps them hire teams and bless the lives of more people and do all those things. What do you say? Have you ever had those voices that are like, oh my gosh, everybody just needs this. Everybody just needs this, but I have to get paid. What's that dialogue like for you?
I guess for me, it sounds like there are other ways that I can help this person that would help them maybe learn to write their own better copy. Or I could connect them with one of my students who doesn't charge at the same level as I do. But I know that one person can only serve so many people. And I guess I got past that relatively quickly, because when I say yes to the wrong things, I'm actually saying no to the right things sometimes. And so I have to think about, what is this yes going to mean that I'm saying no to on behalf of my child's college tuition, on behalf of being able to sit in the bleachers for their games, and just things like that. Like, you have to think about what the best yes is. And sometimes the best yes is a no for a prospective client, because it's not going to fall in line with what you're called to do and what your family needs.
And do you think that you feel that, we'll call it an opportunity cost, right? What you just described is that every choice has an opportunity cost. Do you feel like that you feel that more as a woman in business as far as opportunity costs? What are your thoughts?
I think it depends on your personality. If pleasing others is one of your personality traits, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, you're going to feel that a little bit more than somebody that doesn't have that bent as much. I had to learn early on that it was important to really speak up for myself, to stand up for my business, and that it was okay. This business, I believe, is something given to me by God. And so taking care of it is an important part of my role as the leader of my business. And so, in that way, if I'm saying yes to everything and then burning out and missing out on time with my family, or maybe having to turn down a client that I would really love to work with, then I'm not actually doing my job, really.
I just had a shift in my brain. When you were talking about, I recognize that my business has been given to me from God, it takes a lot of the pressure off of self, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this has been given to me. And so I'm going to take this seriously. And I'm going to make decisions that not only feel good here, but also feel good to my spirit that I try to communicate with God with, right? I
Right.
love that. I absolutely love it. So now you're at okay, I've invested, I've learned Facebook ads, I was with them for a year. I'm now going to build my own thing. So how did you decide that new direction of what this was going to look like now that it's away from Facebook ads, this specific agency, which I love that you still write for them sometimes. I think that's brilliant. And now you've expanded. Tell me a little bit about that part of your journey.
So I decided early on that I was only going to offer sales copy deliverables. I wasn't going to try to do websites or blogs or, social media captions. I was really just going to go with what I knew, but also what I knew I could get results in. And so, like I said, my business tripled in 60 days. And suddenly I was like, wow, okay, not only do I have a multi six figure run rate here, but I've got more clients than I can serve at once. So I need some help. I need to hire some writers to take some of these tasks so that I can continue to grow, because I knew that I wanted to keep growing my business. And so I started looking around and realized pretty quickly that my budget wasn't enough to be able to hire somebody at the same level that I was at. But I wanted my clients to be able to get the same results as I could get them, no matter who was writing. And so I realized pretty quickly that I was going to have to train the writers myself. And so I started really thinking about, okay, how do I get the results that I get? What questions am I asking? What steps am I going through? How is it that I'm able to get these conversion results for my clients? And I realized I didn't really know. Like instinctually, I was good at it, but I couldn't have explained it to someone else. And it put me on this journey, like a 6-month journey of taking everything apart and putting it back together again so that I could teach someone else to get the same results that I could get. And as I did that, and I started sharing it with writers and getting their feedback, I realized that I really loved creating trainings that broke down complex things and made them simple. And so that's kind of simultaneously from growing my services side of my business, I started recording trainings for copywriters and for business owners who wanted to learn how to write better copy. So I don't know. I just decided to grow 2 different kinds of business at the same time. And, that was kind of a wild ride too, but it was important for me to know that I could help someone else get the same results as me. And it gave me confidence knowing that I could hop on a discovery call with anyone and immediately know, yes, I can help you, or that is not my wheelhouse. There's a better writer out there somewhere for you. And that was huge for me in terms of being able to confidently stand behind what I do. And it really was kind of a game changer to have that level of in-depth understanding of the process that I go through to be able to write the kind of copy that gets the kind of results that I do.
Okay, it makes me think of this conversation I had with Catherine Jones, right?
Oh.
And Catherine Jones and I were both kind of building separate frameworks, and we were like dying in the process, right? We were just like commiserating together over Voxer. And one of the things that we landed on is one of the most challenging elements of entrepreneurship as you're scaling, like finding your legacy, which is where you're at, right? Is extracting instinct.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How do you extract instinct? Because most people can take those spiritual gifts, that instinct, they can charge for it and they can serve clients, right? That's like the first phase of entrepreneurship that we've got to figure out is how to produce results,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Then you go into this world of saying, well, the only way for me to impact more or scale, whatever terminology you want to use, is I've got to hire other people. But gosh, they're not me. They're not my brain. And so many people just put up the wall and just say, look, it's me or the highway. And I'm just going to continually raise my prices. And that's my only option. But you went through, oh, Catherine would be so proud. You went through that huge experience of extracting your instinct into training videos so that you could get those writers that you wanted, right?
Yeah, I did. And it was, yeah. Yep. And I listened a lot. I listened just anytime I was hearing people talk about their process, anytime I was hearing people talk about how they had grown their business, I was listening to the little pieces and putting them together like, oh yeah, I have to find out that information from clients before I can write for them. That's part of my framework. And I would take it and then I would figure out, where does this fit? And then I would create a process around it, stories that would help illustrate and make it memorable, and then exercises to help my students practice it so that they could take that and turn it into work.
Okay, so are you giving us the framework right now, like in this moment? You
Oh,
listen
how to
first?
build. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I love a good framework. They just follow the steps and you get the result.
Because what I'm hearing is like, listen, right? Identify the problem. How do you make it memorable and how you craft it, and then let people practice, right? I'm sure I skipped a step, but that was kind of your process for creating this.
Right. Yeah. For figuring out how I could pass on what was lived only in my brain to someone else. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And I want to connect this other dot that you were talking about. Like once I had done that, anytime I got on a discovery call, I knew whether to say yes or whether to say no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so talk to me a little bit about what are the signs when you know to say yes and when you learn to say no to a client? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for a client who understands their target audience. They need to know who exactly they're going for.
Mm.
Nobody's offer is desired by absolutely everyone on the planet unless you're selling toilet paper. And even then, there's debate about what people do.
Amen.
They have to have a very clear target audience and an understanding of how they're helping them. And they have to have, so I can get best results for someone either if they let me walk them through the entire process to figure all of it out from the very beginning, or they already have a place where they have their tested funnel, their tested offer that will sell. They have a budget for marketing. They have a budget for paid traffic, and they have a budget for the contractors that can help them put the pieces together.
Yes. So that's what you're looking for already in place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Already in place. Okay, brilliant. So let me just dive into this whole idea of I'm now going to extract my brain. I'm going to train other writers so that I can scale this. I was sitting with a coach weeks ago that was asking the question, when you're kind of at a why moment in the business, right? And you know that like the pressure's building and something needs to pivot. Like it's the sign. Entrepreneurs know when that's happening. And he asked the question, yeah, but like, what kind of business do you want?
Yes.
How did you know?
I didn't.
Love it. I didn't.
So I had been in this digital marketer space for a couple of years now, year and a half by this point. And so I just looked around at the people I was learning from. And I was like, okay, cool. They've got that kind of a business. That's the kind of business I'll have too, because I see it working for them. Well, you see the highlight reel, right?
Yeah, that's the reality. Yeah.
How their personality is different from yours. You don't see what's going on behind the scenes. And so I really was just like, okay, cool. So if I want to keep growing, I've got my services side over here. I know how to train somebody. I could also be a coach. I could sell my programs and courses. And so I was doing that. So doing all of the things. And honestly, sometimes you just have to try different things and then figure out, yeah, that's not for me. And so it was a lot of that. I even feel like in the last 12 months, I've been going through a lot of just giving myself permission to really figure out what kind of a business do I really want? Because I have that freedom now to figure out what do I really want. And if it looks different than my coaches or the people I look up to, I'm cool with that as long as that's what's in, what God has in store for me, and being willing to let go of the expectations that I would put on myself to try to achieve XYZ just because that's what this certain trajectory seems to, play out. It's empty if it's not something that's for you, so.
It really is. And you and I both grew up I say grew up, funny, but we grew up in the ClickFunnels space,
Yes.
right? Grew up in the ClickFunnels space, which has just changed my life dramatically. I cannot give enough thanks to that community and that leadership for what they have done for people who want to live on a farm in Iowa and grow a business, right?
Yes.
So much gratitude. And one of the first phases that they put you through is modeling, right? That you find what your thing is and you model. And you did that, right?
Yep.
Modeled after a coach, you modeled after an agency, you modeled after whatever. And now you're in this space. And I love how you said it. You said, now I have the freedom to kind of do what I want, right? I now can build this legacy. And here's my question for you is something that creeps in to our brain when we're told, well, just try it, just put it out there and see what the market does. And we'll just see if this fits and see if this is a success and see if you kind of hate this kind of thing here. One of the dangers of that is actually being disingenuous to the audience, right? Mm-hmm. To the avatar, flip-flopping and we can get into politics all day long if you want to, but there's this really bad thing associated with being a flip-flopper and changing all the time. And what are you even offering now? And you keep changing, what do you say to that? Isn't that flip-flopping all the time?
Yeah, and that's a tough one for me. I like consistency, and I'm not the kind of person who craves change. I will loyally beat the same drum forever if it's something that's working. I'm happy to do that. I like that. And so the idea of having to shift and pivot and change all the time, it seems stressful to me, but I get it because it's the same with messaging. I can work with the client and present them with what the market shows me will work. And we can pick it down for months. And, oh, no, this is what we should go with. This is what we should go with. And guess what? The audience is the one that votes. And so you have to give them a chance to vote by putting it in front of them. So we can pick our businesses apart for months and years. But until we allow the people that we serve to vote with their time, attention, and money, we don't really know if we're building something that will help them or if we're just building something that we like. I've definitely been guilty of that, building something I like, something I think copywriters would like. Well, yes, but Christa, you're an established copywriter now. It's not the same as when you're a mom, wondering how to get your first client.
Oh, so you've actually found in your experience with the market that just going out there and giving it the best shot for the first game at least gives you the data, right? Yeah. That you can then pull from. And I want to just echo that I think you're right, that your audience is not as into every word and every email that you are sending as you are, right?
Right.
They are not. And they're actually quite
number 1 in 10 things, really. Which is why we have to repetitively put the same things in front of them, because that's how they grasp and remember and take action.
Yes, give them a chance to give you a chance, right?
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. And entrepreneurship is so awesome. It's like World Cup soccer because you get to fail and succeed publicly, right? And that is just the price of freedom.
Part of it all.
Yes. It's here we go. I'm crazy. Let's just do it anyway. Well, as we kind of have witnessed your story and watched your process and the incredible things that you have built and the ways in which you've pivoted and you've reached for God and you've, changed offers and scaled and done all these things. If you look back on your life and you say, okay, I kind of know where I'm headed, but as I look back on what I've accomplished, what are things you feel like you have done and you have succeeded in that many would say, gosh, Christa, that's unreasonable to want that? What would you narrow in on?
I built a business that lets me work where I want, when I want, with who I want, that I get to say what my prices are. I've built a business that lets me work virtually, set my own hours. Like, I know I just said that. It just blows my mind though. Especially where I live, it's very rural. And so it's, you work a job, you work a trade, you go work to grow someone else's business. So the idea that I get to do all of this for my own business, but also in a way that is so different and unusual than most people that I know face to face in person. It's just kind of wild.
It is wild. And what are some of the things that you have had to give up to fight for that you're proud of?
I had to give up the idea that I would be able to talk about my business and people would understand what I was talking about.
Ooh, a social aspect.
A little bit, yeah. I had to, so I get super excited about it. I could talk digital marketing and strategy and stuff all day, but that is what my relatives and, that's going to put people to sleep. And it's the same for anyone who's really into their career or really into their passion. We have to temper that a little bit sometimes. And that's why our online communities and friends and networks are so important. But there was a little bit of like, I have to be okay with people not really understanding what I do. And that's okay. It's all right. They don't have to. They can be the people that they are to me and be just as important and valuable. And I can go elsewhere to talk about my business, and that's totally fine. Yeah. When my business was in like growth phase, that's just an intense time. And so I had to step back from some of like the volunteer type stuff that I was doing, some of the outside that, I was on the library board and I was on this committee. I had to step back from some of those things, which is hard for somebody who really loves helping. I love helping. Thankfully, yes. What I do for business owners is also helping. So it kind of just shifted into that. But, having to make priorities and get serious about, if this is the goal that I have for my business, it's going to require this. And so that means I won't be able to say yes to every meeting or committee or volunteer opportunity that comes my way anymore.
And as I look into your personal life, you're married to Jeremy, right? Mm-hmm. And you are new empty nesters.
We are new empty nesters. And yes.
And here's why I bring that up. Yeah. And it's coming down the pipeline for most listeners, or they're living it right now, the empty nester phase. I still have a 5-year-old at home, so I feel like it's a little bit far away. So my question is, you now have some perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Now that those kids are gone and that you've got your 3 dogs at home, which are kids in their own right? But we talk about, you've been unreasonable by saying, I want to work when I want, for how much money I want, where I want. I can say yes, I can say no. And the price for that was some social things that you've had to give up of people understanding, and that you've also had to give up on volunteer opportunities, which I think is very near and dear, right, to you as you want to help people. But really what I want to end on is, what have you gained by fighting for the unreasonable, especially now as an empty nester, when you can look back on raising those kids, living rural? Like, what have you gained?
We were able to spend more time with our kids in the years that they were home than most people do. Probably 80 or 90% of people. And I would not trade that for the world. We're super close with our kids. They both went on to college, are doing great. And of course, as a homeschooler, you still have those moments where you're like, am I ruining my child's education? No, we didn't. Yeah. It was a growth experience for all of us. But it was worth it. Every single minute we were able to travel with our kids because they had schedule flexibility. They came with us sometimes. We were able to give them experiences that we would never have been able to before had we had 9-to-5s. We're able to, send them off to college without them having college loans and debt that would make their adult life a hard launch, as soon as they're out of that. And also they were able to see us do things differently and realize that they probably have more options than most of their friends. And they've seen the inside of that. They've seen how your path doesn't have to look like everybody else's for it to be a good path, for it to be a successful path. So just having that like openness of, if I can learn, then I can create something that I love that helps other people and takes care of my needs.
I want to interview your kids. I would love to. What was it like to grow up with a parent, specifically a mother, that went after the unreasonable?
I would love to be there for that interview. I know that there was a definite shift, especially with my daughter when she was very young and I was still in the livestock industry, working in someone else's business where they owned all of my time. I can remember her saying to me, I would never want to do what you do, Mom. You work all the time. And then later on, when she was in high school, I shifted into my own business. Like, oh, how the tables have turned. She's like, well, that's cool because, you get to do things that most other moms don't get to do. And just being way more open to it when she sees like the dream having been realized. But yeah.
And how lucky that she got to see the before and after, right? That she wasn't just born into this whole idea, Mom has immense freedom and I'm homeschooled and we just do all these things, that she got to see this transformation in her mother. Like, priceless, Christa, priceless. So the last thing I want to ask you as we wrap up this interview is, what have you gained in your marriage from this?
Oh man. So when I first started doing this, I think it was different, really different for my husband. He's like, oh, you're so into it. I don't get it. He came with me, though, to a meeting for my coaching program. Like, there was a live event and he came away from that and he was like, I get it. I get it. I want in. I am here for you. How can I help? How can I get involved? And from that moment on, like, he got the bug, and so he's been my biggest cheerleader, my biggest supporter. We are so close. We're just each other's best friends, and we get to hang out all day, every day, really. And so that was a huge shift, because before it was kind of like I was in it alone. Not that he meant
sure
me feel that way, but because he hadn't really caught the vision yet. But once he caught the vision, he was like, give me the Kool-Aid. Let's go. We're all the way in. And yeah, that's just been amazing.
And I think that is one of the best parts of my conversation with you, is to recognize and look at you and say, she's an empty nester. She's living rural. And her marriage is not only intact through this entrepreneurship journey, but when he said, I want in, my heart just skipped a beat for a minute. I thought, that is the dream, right? That is the freedom of a marriage and of a partnership, or those of you listening, whatever that relationship looks like for you, to have a partner who doesn't speak the lingo and doesn't speak the funnel world and doesn't speak this, to see you and say, I want in. I want into that dream with you. And what an incredible partnership you've built. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for your time. We've certainly been blessed with looking at your journey, but especially inspired by the tenacity and the audacity that you have had to just say, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to make a million mistakes along the way. And I'm going to figure it out anyway. And I'm grateful that you're able to look at this stage of your life and say it was absolutely not only worth it, possible, but it has been the dream I thought it would be.
Bigger than I thought it would be. Yeah.
God is good that way.
Yes.
God is good that way. Well, thank you again so much, Christa, for talking to us all about your journey and your experiences. And I'm going to have to give your kids a jingle and have a really great conversation on what it's like to live with someone who lives unreasonable. So thank you so much for your time and your stories today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Unreasonable Autonomy podcast. If you loved this episode, my guests and I would love to hear about it. Go to the show notes to reach out and let me know what resonated with you or what topics or guests you want to hear in the future. I am here to create for you. Look, I deeply admire your commitment to pushing boundaries and going after an unreasonable life. Keep dreaming big, taking bold steps, and expecting the unreasonable. For more, go to the show notes to dive deeper into the conversations that will keep you going. Thanks for being here.